Ah, oh, all right. Hey, so it just told me my internet connection was not great. So I'm glad it is working and I'm glad it is on. I literally just walked down from the barn, so I'm really sweaty, so I'm really sorry. But today I wanted to talk a little bit about my Wine About It Wednesdays. And what's fun about this is that, at first it was like going to be funny to complain about things. And then I thought, I want to make everything here super positive. So we have the wine and we are going to toast to things on these Wine About It Wednesdays. I want to answer everybody's questions and just get a great conversation going on of what we do in our program, what personal things I work through, what I help my students work through. And, we were just in Kentucky. I went to Kentucky last weekend to Laura Burkett's beautiful Battle Creek Dressage in Louisville. And I drove up there because I just don't feel comfortable yet getting on an airplane. So I drove and taught about, 24 lessons up there. And while we were there, we did another live interview. And I'm sorry for some of you who can't hear everyone. We are working on it. We're got the microphones. I just typically don't travel with them. So the microphones are here, and Richard's usually my camera guy, and he was in Maryland, long lining all his clients up there. So we're working on the microphone. But what I loved about that interview was I interviewed Laura Burkett and one of her really good, I don't know if they're best friends, but they seem like super close. And so that's Emily Curtis, and she has her training stable down in Lexington. And she brought like 7 horses up. So that was a really fun time. And I've always loved their relationship, and they're very different. They ride very different horses. And so what was cool about that is one of the big things they spoke about was balance. And for me in the riding, that's one of my big things. I really work on keeping my horses sound. I really work on balancing. And Allison Head had a really great conversation about, what does our program look like? What does everybody do? I think that's really fun to, is everybody working in the ring 6 days a week? Do some people go in 2-point and go galloping around? And I do think, it really depends on each horse and what they should do and what their bodies tell them. But I wanted to talk about that because we were talking about balance. And then for me, it kind of tied into self-discipline, which if any of you are familiar with Charles DeComfy, who's been my mentor for over 30 years, and he's amazing. I highly recommend reading anything, watching the salon, hearing him talk about anything. He's so great. And he talks a lot about the virtues of becoming an equestrian. And one of those is self-discipline. And so that kind of really got me thinking, and I talked to my mom about it. And, we really got into thinking what is balance? How do you get balance? How do you get balance in your life? How do you get balance in your program? Because really what Allison Head was talking about was how do you balance training the horse to Grand Prix, keeping it sound, teaching the rider, teaching the horse, making it fun. That is also all about balance. And the more I thought about that, it does come down to self-discipline. And then it sort of tied in with Charles and how that's all sort of related. So I kind of thought about, what do we need balanced? First and foremost, we need to be balanced inside ourselves. Our life needs to be balanced. I thought that pop-up interview with Laura and Emily was awesome because Laura's a mom, kind of a new mom. I think Connor's 2 or 2.5 maybe. So that's a new shift for her, but for her to find balance. And Emily is like me and doesn't, we've got enough 4-legged kids that we don't need more children, more toddlers around. But that balance of, find, not getting burned out, spending time with your husband, with your family, doing something for yourself. Like, what does that look like? And then that got me thinking, balance in relationship to horses. Like, well, what is that? And that's about keeping the horse off its front legs, really sound, balanced in his brain, that he doesn't feel stressed and pressured, and then that got into, well, isn't that totally related to balance in the program? And so then that tied me into Allison's questions about, like, what do we do? Like, what do we do in our program? And we've got a beautiful farm here, and we're really fortunate to have some hills, because when we go to Florida, we love Florida, and Wellington is awesome, but there are like no hills. So, it was really important to me to find a place where I can canter with grass under their feet. Like, that is just something really grounding for me, and it makes my horses happy. I think it makes me happy, so everybody's happy cantering outside. But it's amazing what the work can do for the horse's stifles. I think riding on uneven ground is great. I think we have our trot poles set up in the outdoor. That's important. We even had a good conversation here about lunging. I think teaching a horse to properly lunge is really important. And sometimes it's just great, to just see them from the ground and, be like, what shoulder are they falling on? What rein are they pulling on? What direction are they more balanced? I think that's wonderful to sometimes, and I know with Richard, the long lining, he, the horse tells him a very important story when we take the rider away, and, you can see, like, what are we allowing when we're riding? So I thought that was, really fun to kind of incorporate that into, what we do. So, all of our horses have at least one day off a week, but usually it's 2. So for my horses, I, attempt, working on my balance, I attempt to take Mondays off. That's usually works when I'm teaching a clinic or I have a horse show. So Mondays are usually, at least Monday mornings, I unplug, I recharge, because at the end of the, just like Laura said in that video, like, when you come back fresh, like, that's just great for everybody. So I take my horses that usually have Mondays off, and then Tuesday is the first day back. So I do a lot of fundamental work. I do a lot of going on the bit, stretching to the bridle, going forward, like whatever is that horse's real, like, bigger weakness. I want to really target that. And I don't want to say exaggerate that, but I want to really spend some time, getting that horse really through, really balanced in the canter, really pulling its neck out of its back. For those of you in the academy, there was like a great sneak peek of our video with Isaac on how to get a horse's nostrils in front of the eyeballs so they're not overflexed. So like on a horse like Isaac, I really focus a lot on a horse like that who's got the short neck. I really, ask him to really pull his neck out of his back that day. For Gideon, he needs to go forward because he sometimes like has these little pony bucks. So he's really about looseness. So always on Tuesday, I really work on the fundamentals. I really get the horse in a good way. It's a positive way to start the week. Wednesday, then the second day of the week, for my horses working, we get to the good stuff. We're teaching flying changes. That's the day we get into there. We teach new things on Wednesday. We hone really big skills. If I'm going to be going to a show and I want to check on something, it's pirouettes on the center line. It's, can I get my half passes a little more expressive? What's my piaffe passage look like? And so then Thursday is sort of a review of what we worked on Wednesday. I want to be able to, see with the horse, like what they understood from the day before. If I can keep it shorter, like that's great. If I need another follow-up day to, get off my leg or get the one-time tempies better. Like I spend that day. And then Friday is either a hack day or an easy day. Some of them just have the day totally off. Some lunge, some long line with Richard. And then Saturday is again kind of a mixture of hard work again. I want to go into those subjects. I want to really strengthen in that horse. If he's really stiff in the hips, I would want to do a lot of half pass. If he is learning how to collect, I might do that day, rein back into canter, something to stimulate the way I want him to function in his body. And then Sundays can be a little bit more fun day. Gideon loves to go hill work and trot up the hills. We try to get everybody out, as much as possible. I'm a big fan of turnout. We're working on building bigger fields because it rains a lot and then the dew is really heavy in the morning. So, that's not always so easy to consistently turn them out. So we have all weather paddocks. But I want the horses moving as often as possible. I probably do trot poles, once or twice a week. And again, it's not with every horse, It's always about kind of finding what am I working on and what do I want to accomplish. I think it's really important to have daily goals. I think it's important to really know where you're going. So that's important to have a plan. And of course, we always have to adjust the goal. It's not like we are going to do this no matter what, and then everybody's frustrated. And, so I always joke with my students that I sort of mention something to the horse like, hey, how about a canter half pass, but I never want to be like, you're going to do it, So that's, again, that balance of how do you find that leadership? How do you press the horse without making him sour or feel nervous? But how do you go accomplishing things? So yeah, I have one horse. He's a beautiful 6-year-old. And Carol Connor, no, there's no jumping. We have put the canter ground poles out, that we can maybe make like some canter cavalettis. But I kind of feel like for me, that doesn't really get the looseness I want over the horse's back. It kind of puts them on the forehand and, it kind of cracks their back, but I can definitely get them a little bit, better through their body in another way. So Sierra also just asked me, what are the factors that I consider when I'm deciding a 5-day a week or a 6-day a week? There are some horses out there that definitely get stiffer with more time off, and so with those horses, I definitely take those out on the hills, we walk a lot, so in general, like our 3-year-olds work like 3 days a week, our 4-year-olds work 4 days a week, and our 5-year-olds work 5 days a week. And then, like my Grand Prix horses, again, depending on fitness, maybe they can do something light. If I'm going to be gone for the weekend, then I ride them lightly Tuesday through Friday, and then the girls ride them Saturday. They have Sunday off. So yeah, it's a lot of, it's like, how to explain it? Like there's stress, we have to like build the horse up to the Grand Prix, and we train them all with the end in mind. So it's not like, oh, well, this horse is only going to be a second level test 2. He doesn't get the same, focus or concentration. Like for me, we always train with the end in mind, and you'd be amazed. Charles always talks about strength and skill builds a horse to the Grand Prix. So I also, don't put a ceiling on that horse, and I'm not going to ask that horse to do, like, it's just, gradual, systematic training, up the levels. Do I do any conditioning work like trot canter sets? Fiji was like on a major, exactly, Debbie, like an athlete. Fiji did a lot of trot sets. I really love the canter. I always hear Charles in my mind where it's like canter is a resting gait and is the horse's friend and builds a horse up. Trot is more man-made and breaks a horse down. So I love to do a ton of cantering. Long canters, 2-point in the canter, to get a horse really good over the back. Gideon loves his 2-point time. And Naomi, I see you're commenting, and I also use the Equicore, the Equibands. I like to ride in them because I like to ride as much as possible. Ride. Horse. So I like to ride in them, and sometimes I only add the belly band. Sometimes we only add the back strap. But we find that a really great way to engage the horse's core a little bit better. And so with those 5 days a week, it's also about the balance and the self-discipline to be committed. We talk about, every horse has a warm-up, a work phase, and a cool down. When I lived in Hungary and I was training with Eula Dalos, who just was an amazing trainer, man, just wonderful. I had a wonderful time there. And, I say sportsman because he used to always pride himself on that he was he is a sportsman. But he trained the horses that way. There was a distinct warm up. Here in our program, we walk for at least 15, 20 minutes. I'm sure my poor grooms, don't love that. So sorry, guys. Because sometimes I'm finishing up with a horse and it's like, just get them walking, walk as much as possible. So that's, for my horse, is a big part of that warm up is that walk. Then there's a distinct work phase, whether I'm working through an issue or I'm teaching him something new, circling back and going through so that they really understand a concept. And then there's a real cool down. Sometimes if you're really working on something difficult and the horse really gets it, sometimes I just walk, long rein, pet them cookies, and we go for a hack and we just leave the arena. I find that really a positive way of training, that we always want to have the horse seek the yes. I don't know if Tiffany Moritz is watching, but I know Debbie is, and we were talking about Bruiser, and she taught her how to clicker train. And I love that because we spoke about that whole idea of helping the horse seek the yes. Yes, that's right. It's not perfect, but it's better. And I know Scott Hassler was really great to really help me promote the improvement, not the perfection. So I've always loved that. So there's always this warm up, work phase, cool down. I also think it's interesting, and this was something that Eula in his program, I don't even know, I'm sure at some point he explained it to me, or Jofi was translating it for me, but I noticed with all my journaling that I did, that we really worked the short muscles and then we worked the long muscles. And so by the short muscles, I mean there's an emphasis on collection. That's your piaffe, your passage, your canter pirouette, your shoulder in, your rein backs, really seated exercises. Then, we really sent the horses forward and worked on their long muscles, which would have been, we did a lot of transitions inside the canter, collected canter, medium canter, collected canter, medium canter. Medium canter, down to trot, back to canter. There was a lot of he would always tell me, Jessica, the pointer finger is really important. Jessica, more activity, along with more control and more preparation, which I spoke to with my students today. But it was so interesting how we used to mix the shorter sitting muscles versus the bigger pushing propulsion muscles. And so I want you guys to think about that too, in your daily work. And then it also comes down to, this self-discipline, which is one of the equestrian virtues that Charles speaks about. And when I was looking through my notes, it was after self-discipline, I wrote self-awareness, cause and effect, which I love that one, and then this internal self-discipline of what am I doing? When you think about this balance we're looking for, it all comes into also how many times do I repeat this exercise, and how hard do I push this horse, and when do I stop it? How many times do I repeat it? And like the big question I want to, help everybody think about when they're riding is like, is this for me or is this for the horse? And sometimes when we're learning, I know Catherine is watching, and she's got a wonderful schoolmaster, and we were talking about that today. Like, when is it like he needs to repeat it and she needs to repeat it so she can learn it? But then like, when is that moment that he's frustrated and she wants to repeat it one more time because she knows she can get it? And both Ashley Perkins and I are like, is that what's best for him? Or, and it is best for him, for her to get better, but it's also that balance again, and that self-discipline to be like, I need to dig deep and I need to get her done so I don't have to repeat it 100 times. And that's, Eula would always be like, Jessica, again. And you're like, oh God, and I shared this story about Major James Nesmuth, who was a prisoner of war in Vietnam. And it is this story that I talk about at every clinic, when we start to get on this either visualization or self-discipline, and the power of the mind. And I shared this story in Team Tate TV, so hopefully you'll all get a chance to read it, but I'll give you a quick cliff notes on it. That for 7 years, he was a prisoner of war in Vietnam. And he was kept in this like tiny cage. It was like 4 by 5 feet. So like tiny little spot. Like imagine that. I mean, I know we all thought isolation was really hard during this Corona time, but okay, like 7 years in a small cage. He did not see anybody, talk to anybody, nothing. And every day he visualized a perfect round of golf for him. Just really, it's amazing. Like every day he smelled the fresh cut grass. He felt the club in his hands. He visualized the perfect stroke for whatever putt he was doing or whatever. And on a typical day or, playing golf, his score would be like in the 90s. And so he finally got released. And one of the first things he wanted to do was go to that favorite place of his and play golf. And he scored like a 74. It was like the best score he'd ever gotten, like ever. And you're like, how is that possible? Like he was in this tiny cage. Like what? Power of the mind. The self-discipline to keep your mind under control that's what that story is about. And, it just really got me thinking about, yes, visualization is great. I highly recommend it to everybody. I do a lot of it myself, but this self-discipline about, really creating the right program for your horse and then sticking to it. It's very easy to like, oh, this isn't working. I got to do something else, and usually that's the moment right before the breakthrough is going to happen, So, this was just a really great topic. And again, it was so fun to interview Laura and Emily. And, it just got me thinking. And then Allison's questions about what the heck do we do, in our weeks here. And again, it is about honoring your horse, knowing what his body needs. Like Fiji didn't have great front feet. He kind of had like a little like high-low and, and like weak stifles. So that horse, thank God for all the girls that work for me and guys, but all the girls would be the riders. We take him out twice a day. He goes out on the hills. He walks, and now at Elizabeth's, he's got a treadmill. So that's great. We don't have a treadmill. We have manpower and saddle time. So that's what we did, but like every horse is a little bit different. With my young horses, we really try to keep the ride 20 to 30 minutes, including the lunging. So we're not stressing their joints. Oh, there's a good question. When do you think self-discipline can go a bit too far for a rider? And I would say that is like you become obsessed. You know, when I was a younger trainer, I think I would lose track of time, which is why sometimes still happens. That's why a 12-hour day is sometimes just normal. And I love it what Carol just said. Sticking to it is important for students to recognize that too, which I agree, because sometimes you just have to keep on keeping on, like repeat, just again. You know, if I had $1 for every time Eula would tell me, Jessica, again, and I'm just like, ugh, you know, I mean, I could afford that treadmill. But it's important, this stick-to-itness, but it's also important not to get obsessed. You know, it's important to, you know, be able to see the whole picture. Where am I going? What do I want to achieve? And not become obsessed with perfection. It's also about, did it get better? You know, that's another thing about when Charles is teaching, he talks about engagement. And the definition of engagement, one of the definitions, is that the main aspect of the exercise improved. That was better engagement, you know? And so we always have to think about, did I get closer to my goal, or am I like obsessed with it? And I'm just going to do it and do it. And that's when the horse starts to get a little bit internal and maybe worried, maybe stressed, maybe annoyed, you know. And so that's important to have that discipline of when, you know, and we all deal with that. When is the right time to push? When is the right time to back off? We have to listen to our horses. We have to, you know, have a good grit to, you know, keep showing up, and always do the next right thing, as my friend Lisa would say. So yeah, I think always a good question to ask ourselves is this for me, or is this for the horse? And of course, like everybody here on this wonderful group, you know, we are all for the horses. So I want to leave you with that, and cheers to having self-discipline and balance in our lives. And I hope you guys make it a great week. Thanks so much for joining.